Whispers at Dead Maid's Cross, the mystery of the black dog. The wind howls through the barren trees, carrying with it a chilling whisper that seems almost human. The road ahead is cracked and uneven, swallowed by creeping mist. At the EI center stands an ancient milestone, its surface weathered by time, its presence an unspoken warning. This is Dead Maid's Cross, where the past refuses to stay buried. The villagers do not walk this road at night. They say the air grows too still, the silence too unnatural, broken only by a sound that does not belong, the deep, guttural growl of a creature unseen. Some claim to have glimpsed it, a dark shape slinking between the trees, its eyes burning red like embers in the blackness. Others whisper of footsteps behind them, only to turn and find nothing but shadows stretching, long beneath the pale moonlight. It's just the wind, the outsiders say, old tales to scare the weak-hearted. But those who have lived here long enough know better. There is something on this road, something that does not forget. Dead Maid's Cross is older than the village itself. It lies at the border of Wiltshire and Somerset, a place where one world bleeds into another. Crossroads have always carried a certain weight in folklore, points of transition where the living and the dead sometimes meet. The soil here is damp, forever cold to the touch, as if the ground itself remembers what was taken from it. Long ago, a girl was buried here, not in the village churchyard, where the good and the faithful rest. No, she was laid to rest at the crossroads where lost souls belong. No headstone, no marker, just earth and silence. But the earth does not always keep its dead. It happened years ago, the older villagers say, their voices dropping to hushed tones, as if the story itself carries weight. But some things don't die with time. There are those who claim to have seen her wandering these roads, a pale figure in the distance, moving soundlessly through the mist. Some say she calls out for the ones she lost, her voice barely a breath against the wind. Others insist it isn't her you should fear, but the thing that lingers beside her, a hound as dark as night, its eyes glowing like dying coals. It does not bark, it does not chase, it only watches. I saw it once, an old farmer muttered, gripping his ale with shaking hands. Walking home late just past the bend. Thought it was a stray till I saw the eyes red burning. I turned and ran, never looked back. Some laugh at these tales, calling them the ramblings of an old mind twisted by fear. Others do not laugh at all. They lock their doors early and avoid the roads when the sky turns black. Best not tempt fate, they say. Best leave the past undisturbed. But what is past is not forgotten. It is said that long ago, before the land was divided by fences and roads, there stood a farm on the outskirts of Chapmanslade, a simple place run by a hard-working man and his only daughter, a girl of rare beauty and restless heart. Many loved her, but love, when taken lightly, can be a dangerous thing. Two men wished to claim her heart, each believing they alone had won her affections. But she played a cruel game, meeting one by day, the other by night. For a time she enjoyed the attention, the thrill of their devotion, but secrets never stay hidden for long, and when the truth surfaced, so did the rage. That comes with betrayal. Their duel was fought. Two men stood upon the hill at dawn, pistols in hand, their hearts heavy with anger. One would live, the other would fall. And watching from the edge of the clearing was the girl, eager to see which would remain standing. Never. Imagining that by sundown all three of them would be dead. But it is not the duel itself that haunts this land. It is what happened next. It is the silence that followed the gunshot. The whimper of a black dog beside its master's lifeless body. The way it rose, trembling as if something inside it had broken, and the way it turned to face the one who had fired the shot. The screams that followed are not spoken of, and when the girl was found days later, her body limp at the base of the great oak, no one questioned why. Some say it was grief. Others say it was fear. But the truth is whispered only in dark corners. She was not alone that night, and she was not the only one buried at the crossroads. To this day, the villagers avoid Dead Maid's Cross when dusk settles. The road seems longer in the dark, the air heavier, as if unseen eyes watch from the trees. If you hear the howls, do not stop, they warn. If you see something moving in the fog, do not look too closely. And if, by some cruel trick of fate, you meet the black dog of Chapmanslade, run, because once it sets its eyes upon you, you do not have long left. The morning sun spills over the fields, bathing them in gold. The wind carries the scent of damp earth and wildflowers, but beneath the beauty of this place, a secret festers, one that will soon unravel. On the outskirts of Chapmanslade, beyond the winding country roads and sprawling meadows, there stood a modest farm. It was neither grand nor poor, but it thrived under the calloused hands of its owner, a man who had known both hard labor and quiet loss. He had no sons to work the land, only a daughter, Eleanor, who had grown into a young woman of striking beauty. Her golden hair caught the sun like wheat in the wind, and her eyes, deep as the autumn sky, could ensnare the heart of any man who dared meet them for too long. The village folk whispered about her, how she walked through the market with an air of confidence uncommon in women of her station, how her laughter lingered a second too long when speaking to a man. Many had tried to win her favor, but only two had come close. The first was Thomas Hale, the son of a merchant, a man of fire and passion. He was bold, quick with words, and quicker with temper. He adored Eleanor with an intensity that bordered on obsession, promising her a life of riches and adventure beyond the farmlands. He would bring her ribbons from Bath, whisper to her of distant cities where women draped themselves in silk and pearls. The second was Edwin Moore, a quiet and steady man, a carpenter whose hands were rough but heart was kind. He did not shower Eleanor with grand promises. Instead, he built things, small tokens of affection carved from wood. A locket with her initials, a box for her keepsakes, a wooden figurine of a hound, shaped after his own companion, a great black dog who never left his side. Eleanor found herself drawn to both in different ways. Thomas made her feel alive, like she was on the cusp of something thrilling. Edwin made her feel safe, like she would never want for anything more than what she had. But she could not choose, and so she did not. Instead, she crafted a game, one she believed she could play forever. Eleanor saw Thomas by day, meeting him in the shaded groves just beyond the village, where no prying eyes could see them. He would kiss her hands, trace promises onto her skin with his fingertips, and she would let herself be swept up in the excitement of him. By night, she met Edwin under the glow of lantern light behind the old barn, where they sat on a fallen log and spoke of simpler things, of the home he would build for her, of the seasons changing, of the way his dog never let him out of its sight. The black hound would sit close, watching Eleanor with eyes that gleamed like burning embers in the dim light. Sometimes it would let out a soft, knowing whimper, as if it sensed something its master did not. Eleanor told herself it was harmless. After all, what was wrong with being adored by two men? For a while, Eleanor played her game well. She was careful, ensuring that Thomas and Edwin never crossed paths, keeping her words light and her lies seamless. But in a village as small as Chapmanslade, secrets are nothing more than echoes waiting to be heard. The first thread unraveled when a stray word was spoken at the market. Thomas had just left after purchasing Eleanor a blue silk ribbon. As he walked away, he overheard an elderly woman remarking to another, "That young carpenter Edwin is a fine man. His Eleanor is lucky to have him." Thomas froze. The words rang in his head like a bell tolling in the distance. Eleanor with Edwin. It was not possible. And yet the next evening, as Thomas wandered too close to the edge of the farm, curiosity gnawing at him, he saw them. Eleanor, laughing, her hand resting on Edwin's arm. The black dog sat beside them, its deep-set eyes locking onto Thomas as if it sensed the storm brewing inside him. Thomas clenched his fists. A slow, burning rage spread through his chest. She had betrayed him. The moment of discovery. The next morning, Edwin received an unexpected visitor. Thomas stood at the carpenter's workshop, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then, without warning, Thomas reached into his coat and tossed something onto Edwin's work table. A silk ribbon, the same one he had given Eleanor. Thomas, low, measured. "Tell me, Edwin, does she wear your gifts too?" Edwin frowned, confused. until his eyes fell on the ribbon, until he recognized the truth he had refused to see. The air grew heavy between them, thick with unspoken fury and bitter realization. "Edwin," quietly. "You're mistaken." But he knew he wasn't, and so did Thomas. The betrayal settled between them like a slow, creeping poison. In small towns, where honor is currency and reputation is everything, there was only one way to settle such matters. Thomas, voice cold, unwavering. "Tomorrow, at dawn, on Black Dog Hill." He did not need to say more. Edwin understood. And for the first time, the black dog let out a low, sorrowful whimper. That night, Eleanor sat alone in her small room, staring at the empty space before her. She had been so careful. She had thought she could keep them both. Now she would lose them both. She should have felt remorse. Instead, she felt fear. For tomorrow, blood would stain the hilltop, and nothing would ever be the same again. The hour. Air is heavy with the weight of an unspoken farewell. A pale mist drapes itself over the valley, swallowing the trees, the earth, the past. The world is still, as if holding its breath for what is about to unfold. Black Dog Hill loomed over the village like a silent witness, its sloping crest forever tied to whispers of betrayal, honor, and death. At first glance, it was nothing. More than an unremarkable stretch of land, just grass and soil beneath an endless sky. But the villagers never lingered here after dark. They knew better. Even in daylight, something about the place felt wrong. Perhaps it was the way the wind always seemed to murmur through the trees, carrying voices that did not belong to the living. Or perhaps it was because those who stood here at sunrise never walked away the same. At the break of dawn, two men stood opposite each other, their breath rising in the cold air. One would walk away. The other would never leave this hill again. Thomas Hale and Edwin Moore faced each other in silence. Their gazes were hard, unwavering. They had once known each other in passing, exchanging nods at the market, perhaps even sharing a drink at the village inn. But all of that was gone now, burned to ash in the fire of betrayal. Behind Edwin, his black dog sat, motionless. It did not growl, did not move, did not whimper. It only watched. Its dark eyes reflected the growing light of dawn, unreadable, but deeply knowing. The air between the men was thick with hatred, sorrow, and something. Neither of them dared name grief. The seconds stretched like hours. Edwin clenched his jaw. He had not wanted this. But his pride, his love, his anger, everything had led him here. Thomas breathed deeply, his grip tightening around the pistol in his hand. His honor demanded justice, and the only justice he knew was death. A man stood between them, the appointed witness, the one who would ensure the rules were followed. He was an older villager, his face carved by years of hard labor, his hands unshaking despite the gravity of the moment. Witness, grimly. "Step 10, paces, turn, fire on my command." Neither man spoke. They only nodded. They turned their backs to each other. 1. Their boots crunched against the frozen grass. 2. The first rays of sunlight crept over the hilltop, casting long shadows. 3. Edwin's pulse hammered in. His ears, but his grip remained steady. 4. Thomas exhaled sharply, clearing his mind of everything except the task at hand. 5. The black dog shifted slightly, its ears flicking forward. 6. The village below was still asleep, unaware that by the time they woke, one of their own would be dead. 7. The full air felt colder now. 8. A distant crow called from the trees, a lonely sound that vanished into the silence. 9. Edwin hesitated, just for a second. 10. They turned. The final breath. For a moment, time itself seemed to hold still. 2 men, 2 pistols, 1 bullet that would change everything. The black dog, still seated, let out a low, mournful whimper. And then, bang! The sound cracked through the air like a jagged tear in the fabric of the world. A sharp gasp, a staggered step. One of them fell. Edwin stood frozen, his pistol still raised, smoke curling from the barrel. His hands trembled, his breath came in short, panicked bursts. Across from him, Thomas Hale collapsed to his knees. A stain of deep red spread across his chest, soaking into the fabric of his coat. He let out a shuddering breath, eyes wide with the cruel realization that he had lost. Not just the duel, but everything. His fingers twitched as if reaching for something, a past that could not be undone, a future that would never come. And then he was still. The world was silent once more. For a long moment no one moved. Then the black dog stood. Its great frame moved with slow, deliberate steps toward its fallen master. Not Edwin, but Thomas. It lowered its head, sniffing at his motionless form. Her deep, aching whimper escaped its throat, and then a howl. It was not the kind of howl that came from hunger or fear. It was not a sound meant to warn or to call. It was grief, raw, piercing, unmistakable. The sound echoed across the hill, traveling down into the village below, slipping through windows, curling into the ears of those who had just begun to wake. It was a sound no one would ever forget. Edwin dropped his pistol. His hands felt numb. His stomach twisted as he looked at the lifeless form before him. He had won. But why did it feel like he had lost everything? He turned to the black dog, expecting it to leave, to disappear into the woods as all strays do. But it didn't move. It lifted its head and looked at him. The air between them shifted. Something deep in Edwin's chest tightened as he met the dog's gaze. There was no rage, no fury, only sorrow, and something else, a silent promise. The dog lowered its head one final time against Thomas's chest, as if offering a final farewell. Then, slowly it turned and walked into the mist. Years would pass, grass would grow, seasons would change, but the story would never fade. Villagers would swear that on the coldest mornings just before sunrise, they could hear it. A faint, distant howl, carried by the wind. And some claimed that if you stood too long at Black Dog Hill, you might just see it. A shadow among the mist, watching, waiting, remembering. A chilling wind swept across Black Dog Hill, rustling through the grass where blood had been spilled. The sky, once a soft shade of morning blue, had turned grey, muted as if mourning what had just transpired. Edwin Moore stood alone, staring down at the lifeless body of Thomas Hale. His chest rose and fell with uneven breaths, the weight of what he had done pressing heavy against his ribs. His pistol, now useless, felt heavier in his grip. He had won, but something was wrong. The silence felt unnatural, too thick, too absolute. Even the birds, which had chirped moments ago, had vanished from the trees. The only sound was the whispering wind and the rhythmic pounding in his ears. Then, a sound broke the stillness, a low guttural growl. Edwin turned, slowly, too slowly. The black dog still stood there, just as it had before, but something about it had changed. Its body was tense, its head lowered. The once sorrowful eyes now glowed with something darker, not grief, not fear, rage. Edwin took a step back, gripping the pistol tighter, though he knew it was of no use now. "Easy, boy," he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. The dog did not move, it did not blink. It only watched. A new kind of fear crept into Edwin's chest, one that had nothing to do with the duel and everything to do with the thing that stood before him. This was not just a hound mourning its master. This was something else, something ancient, something that understood the rules of justice better than any man ever could. And justice had not been served yet. Edwin barely saw it move. One second the dog was still, its deep growl vibrating through the air. The next, it was a blur of black fur and white teeth leaping straight for him. He raised his arm in defense, too slow. The impact sent him sprawling backward. He hit the ground hard, pain exploding in his ribs, knocking the breath from his lungs. His fingers scrambled for his pistol, but the dog was already upon him. A snarl ripped through the air as sharp teeth sank into his shoulder. A cry tore from Edwin's throat. He struggled, kicked, tried to push the beast away, but it was relentless, its fury stronger than anything he had ever known. For the first time that morning, he truly feared for his life. This was no ordinary dog. It was not just attacking him, it was punishing him. The weight of the beast pressed down on him, claws digging into his chest. His world had narrowed to pain, to the growl in his ear, to the flash of white fangs in the dim morning light. "Stop!" he gasped. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." But the dog did not stop. It did not hesitate, because mercy was not part of the story. It had seen its master fall, had watched as life drained from the only man who had ever loved it. And now the black dog had only one purpose left in this world: to make things right. Final savage growl ripped through the air as the dog lunged again, this time for his throat. Edwin saw it coming, and then nothing. Eleanor arrived too late. She had run, her heart pounding against her ribs, her breath coming in desperate gasps. She had hoped, prayed that she would find them standing, that somehow it hadn't come to this. But when she reached the top of the hill, all she found was death. Thomas lay still, his body cold, his hand limp where it had once clutched his chest. Edwin was slumped beside him, his throat torn open, his eyes wide with the kind of terror that does not fade even in death. And then there was the dog. It stood in the center of it all, blood dripping from its muzzle, its breath coming in slow, steady waves. It turned to her. Eleanor's body froze. She had always known that this moment would come, the moment she would have to face the consequences of her own cruelty. She had played with hearts, with lives, and now those lives were gone. She was alone, completely, utterly alone. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed to the ground, a sob tearing from her throat. "I didn't mean for this," she whispered, over and over, as if saying it enough times would undo what had been done. But words were useless now. No one was listening. Except the dog. Eleanor lifted her head slowly, her tear-streaked face pale and lifeless. The dog had not moved, but it was still watching her, waiting for what she did not know. For a long moment the two remained there, locked in an unspoken understanding. The black dog had taken its revenge. But there was one more piece left in this broken tale. Eleanor rose to her feet, her legs unsteady. She turned step by step and walked away from the hill. Not toward the village, not toward her home, but toward dead Maid's cross. She knew where she belonged now. By the time the villagers found her, she was already gone. They buried her at the crossroads, just as they had buried the others who had taken their own lives. No priest stood over her grave, no flowers marked her resting place. And when the wind howled through the trees that night, it carried with it a whisper, a final lament from a girl who had played with love and lost everything. The dog was never seen again, but even now villagers claim that if you pass Black Dog Hill in the early hours of dawn, you might still hear it. A low, mournful howl. A reminder that justice, once set into motion, does not stop. Not even for the living. The wind moved through the trees in uneasy whispers, carrying the scent of damp earth and something older, something forgotten, but never truly gone. The crossroads stood empty in the dying light, yet the air felt heavy, as if it still bore witness to the sins of the past. Eleanor was not given a place in the churchyard. The village had long followed its customs, and there were rules about the dead. The righteous, those who passed with a priest's blessing, were laid to rest within consecrated ground. But those who took their own lives, those who died in disgrace, they were not granted the same mercy. Instead, they were buried at the borders, at the edges of the parish, at the places where roads met, where the living and the dead did not belong to either world. And so, on a cold morning, Eleanor's body was taken to dead Maid's cross. There was no priest to offer her soul peace, no funeral bells to mourn her passing. Only the whispers of villagers who gathered at a distance, their faces etched with judgment and fear. They dug the grave quickly, quietly, without ceremony. As the last of the soil was packed over her, an older woman muttered a prayer, not for Eleanor's peace, but for the village's protection. A restless spirit brings misfortune, she said, and a grave at the crossroads keeps it bound. But deep down they all knew the truth. Some souls never stay buried. At first there were only whispers, a shadow in the mist, the faint sound of padded footsteps along the back roads, though no one was there. A low growl, distant and unplaceable, drifting through the fields at twilight. Then came the sightings. A travelling merchant swore he saw it first, a great black hound standing at the edge of the woods near Black Dog Hill. He had been making his way through the village after dark, when he noticed it watching him. Didn't move. Didn't blink, he told the innkeeper. Just stood there staring like it knew something I didn't. By the time he looked back, it was gone. Soon, others spoke of similar encounters. A farmer tending to his cattle before sunrise saw a pair of glowing eyes in the distance. A carriage driver lost control of his horses near Dead Maid's Cross after spotting a dark shape loping alongside the road. Each story was different, yet the same. A shadow, a presence, a feeling of being watched. But the one thing no one could explain, the silence. Whenever the black dog appeared, the world around it grew deathly still. No birdsong, no rustling leaves, not even the sound of the wind, as if the earth itself held its breath. Over the years, the legend took shape, passed from parent to child like a cautionary tale. Don't walk the roads alone at night, the elders warned. Don't stray too close to Black Dog Hill. And if you ever see its eyes, run. For it was said that those who locked eyes with the black dog would not live to tell the tale. The stories varied. Some claimed the dog was still waiting for its master to return, forever haunting the places they once walked. Others believed it was no ordinary hound at all, but something older, something bound to the land, guarding the grave of the girl who had sealed its fate. And then there were those who whispered of something even darker, that the black dog was not just a spectre of grief or vengeance, but a warning, that it appeared only to those who carried guilt in their hearts, a silent judge watching, waiting, deciding. The last recorded sighting came many years later. A young man, new to the village, had been drinking late at the inn. He had heard the stories, laughed at them, called them fairy tales for children. He left long after dark, ignoring the advice to take the longer, safer route home. Instead, he took the road past Black Dog Hill. The mist was thick that night, curling along the path like ghostly fingers. He never reached home. By morning they found his body lying at the crossroads. His skin was cold, his eyes wide open, frozen in terror. There were no wounds, no sign of a struggle, but his hands were clenched so tightly that his nails had dug into his palms as if he had seen something he could not escape. Something that had looked back at him. To this day, no one dares walk alone near Black Dog Hill. The wind still whispers through the trees, carrying the weight of a story that refuses to be forgotten. And when the mist rolls in at dusk, the villagers close their doors early, pull their curtains shut, and light candles against the darkness. Because some believe that if you listen carefully on certain nights, just as the world begins to fall silent, you can still hear it. The slow, deliberate sound of footsteps in the dirt, the soft rustling of unseen movement along the road, and somewhere just beyond the veil of fog. Pair of red eyes watching, waiting, listening, for the next soul to stray too close.